We're doing a wagon ride from the parking area back to Dreiblelbis farm for the ice demo. They're doing an ice harvesting demo. I forgot to do my intro at the parking lot.
My uncle's been up in here and sold his whole set.
Check it out today.
Don't walk out there if you don't want to go to Slatington.
No.
To go to high school. From here
we are.
they
Okay.
go to Slatington.
All right.
Playing until the stewardess tells me.
Okay, I'll let you get out.
That's awesome.
Welcome. Who has not been here before?
Right over here, me,
No, for any event.
me,
Okay, then I don't have to bore you with the whole history of the farm.
me, I have it.
You have it.
Nope.
Well, welcome. Welcome. Dreiblelbis have been here since 1778.
Wow.
Before them, this was the largest Lenape North American Indian settlement in eastern Pennsylvania. Dreiblelbis have found over 10,000 Indian artifacts on the farm.
Wow.
It's been a non-profit running it since 1998. Welcome. If you would, if you have not yet done so, sign in on my book. We've done it 4 other times for 4 other events, like John and I. Don't bother. Maybe they won't.
I was having probably yesterday another outdoor event.
Right.
Horse-drawn wagon ride. Okay, that's $2. Free with tickets.
I'm supposed to ask people, if you sign in with your email address, I'm allowed to send you a newsletter, am I not?
Awesome.
Good. I'm learning.
Sure you are. Oh, wait.
I'm
Yeah.
learning that you shouldn't just send people email.
Well, they can always
makes you a
unsubscribe.
Yep,
Well, that's
true.
right. And
That's true.
2 or 3 times a year, somebody will unsubscribe, and that's great. Okay. Mark, who is
Signing in.
wearing a bright blue jacket and kind of like blue pants. Up towards the woodshed. Oh! I have literature to pass out.
Yes, you do.
That'll tell me. Oh, it doesn't say. Oh, have some literature. I made a whole bunch of it.
Thank you, sir.
I already took one.
Good for you. Good for you. We've been doing this about
Not right now.
7 years.
Oh, I'll go. Piece from him.
Started doing public events back in 2000. But
May I have one? Yes, thank you. Oh wow. So this is some of the literature of
Oh, that's fine.
history of the farm and events.
Yeah.
Wow. So. Oh wow, they do a festival in August. I'm gonna have to come back because they do Civil War era stuff. Okay, cool. That's neat. Put my gloves on now. It's cold.
No.
So again, we are here for the Dreiblelbis ice harvest. They got a nice little fire going. Oh man, that feels good. Yeah, feels good. So they're offering stuff here. Hot cocoa for $1 a cup. Oh, I wish I had more money. So I'll probably get a cup eventually. Hello. Hi. All right. Yeah.
Are you with who are you with?
I'm just doing my own thing.
Oh, okay. It looks
Yeah.
pretty official there.
Oh, because of the camera, you mean?
Yeah.
Yeah. No.
Yeah. Very cool.
I'm documenting this because it's going to eventually go on my YouTube channel as well.
That's very cool.
Yeah. When I found out about that on, I think it was on Facebook, I was like, ooh, I got to go to that, check
You
that out.
specialize in historical
definitely a lot of. I try to go to a lot of the historical places
Oh,
too.
great. That's nice.
Yep.
So we're kind of just like mixing station for hot chocolate?
Yes, so you want some cups over there?
Okay. I'm putting things in
Andy's
here.
got the cups down there,
Cups are down here.
the hot
Oh.
chocolate. Oh, you don't want them up there.
Okay. Probably get a cup shortly. In a little bit. So there's some of the implements they use for the ice harvesting. They got the saws and they got, I forgot what they call them. Maybe I'll learn the name of it. You got a few blocks of ice already, that few slabs of ice that they get from the local pond or lake, I believe, or nearby. So I'm gonna sit down in the front here, and then we'll probably explore the rest of the farm afterwards and check it out. You got a little young ice. So I'm going to pause you guys until the events begin.
Okay, I'm not sure how, the first time we use a microphone, so can everybody hear me and is it clear? I would ask maybe you guys should come out a little bit, then I can, you can stay close, but just, I'll be able to see and talk to you. So welcome to the Dreiblelbis farm. Our farm project started here 23 years ago to preserve the property and present the artifacts and cultural aspects of the farm to the public for educational and archaeological purposes. So we're about going through this to preserve the property, and the ice harvesting demonstration is one of our prime events we like to do. There are very few museums that do anything like this, but we acquired this property from a relative that wanted it to be preserved, and there's never been a sale here. This is the second oldest family farm in Berks County, continuously owned, and we got everything, including all the ice harvesting equipment, pots, pans, quilts, you name it. So it was a very unique opportunity to preserve some neat stuff and turn it into the public, turn it into a museum to present to the public. Have anybody been here before? Oh, good. Have anybody been to the ice demo before? Okay, you guys, good. You can help with the demonstration. You can keep your eye on future events the same way you heard about this through our social media, advertising, the community bulletin boards, and plug coming up. We have the Spring Peeper Walk. We have a significant wetlands down here. The spring peeper, little frogs go crazy in the spring. Actually, before that, we will replenish the bedding in our wood duck boxes. It's interesting because the wood ducks use them for about 20 to 25 days in the spring, and then after that, they're empty. But all winter long, they're inhabited by screech owls. And when we open them up to change the sawdust bedding in there, last year we had 3 of our 8 boxes had screech owls in them. So it's kind of unusual to see an owl up close and personal, but you'll get to see these screech owls. Then we have a wildflower walk in May. We have a botanist that takes us down in the swamp and identifies all the natural wildflowers. Of course, our big premier event is our Farm Festival in August. How many people have been to the Farm Festival? Good. It can tell you how we have over 40 reenactors here, 3 different musical groups, house tours. Really, the farm just comes alive of some of the techniques that were used in the old days. So we're happy to have the farm preserved and not turn into another Berks County housing development and present what we have. And, we found this, the ice harvesting stuff was so unique that thought, well, why not? Nothing else is going on in the winter, as long as we avoid Super Bowl weekend. So here we are. So I'm going to give you a little history of the whole ice harvesting business, talk a little bit about what happened on the farm, then we'll go over to the ice house and talk a little bit how they preserved it. And if anybody would like to, can walk down to the ice pond. Now, unfortunately, right at Christmas, there was about 4 inches of ice there. We could have done this, but as of this morning, it was 1.25 inches. So it's just not enough, even though here we are on one of the coldest days of the year, but there's no ice. So kind of unfortunate because it's kind of neat when we can cut the blocks. So feel free to ask questions as we go along. Starting probably formally about 1800 to 1920, nearly every community in the Northeast harvested ice. This was a big deal for them. January, February, it was a short season. They worked like crazy to stock up ice houses, whether it was on a small farm or the commercial ice houses. This was a big deal to get this ice in. Pretty intense work, kind of dangerous. Occasionally the horses and the big legs would fall through the ice and everybody would stop what they're doing, but they anticipated that, and they had a thing called a choke cord on the horse. As soon as the horse plunged in the water, they'd pull this cord which would shut its airway, and it choked it temporarily so it wouldn't drown until they could get its head above water. Everybody would pull it out and they'd dry it off, warm it up, and usually the horse was no worse for the wear. Through the 1800s, ice was developing a big appeal worldwide. 1805, the ice was shipped to Martinique to fight the yellow fever epidemic. So you think 1805, a whole schooner of ice being shipped from this area down to there. It was not always well received. There were records at 1830, the first shipment of ice to New Orleans. The Creole laborers that were unloading it burned their fingers and they rioted. They thought this was evil stuff and they threw the entire cargo overboard. But they just didn't know what ice was and were very suspicious of it. So little by little through the 1800s, the demand for ice was increasing. Meat packing industry in Chicago, the dairy industry, and the beer industry. They found they could ship beer throughout the whole country on the railroads if they could keep it cool. So what they would do would stack a big stack of ice in the front of the boxcar, and as the train went along, this cold air would waft down over the beer and keep it cool enough that they could actually ship it nationwide. In Cincinnati, 1830, they have records of ice being sold, chipped ice being sold on the street by a little basketful. So people were getting the kind of idea this unique stuff was pretty cool to have ice around. And then also at the same time, private homes were starting to use ice in little ice coolers and ice boxes to keep their food preserved. Yeah, this is pretty amazing. By 1830, ice was the second largest U.S. export. I think, and I'm not sure first, I think first was something, an agricultural product like wheat maybe. But the second biggest export commodity in the entire country was ice. It was going to Rio de Janeiro, to India, to Australia. I mean, you think that was a huge industry at that time with shipping what they had in transportation to carry this heavy stuff. 1850, New York used 300,000 tons of ice just in the city. So throughout all New England, up into Canada, even Pennsylvania, this was a big industry. They considered ice almost as essential in the summer as coal was in the winter. Generally, we'd have 25 pounds delivered 4 times a week to your house. They put a little card in the window if you wanted a quarter block, half block, or full block. And that cost $2 a month to have 3-4 times a week delivery. Now, it's often asked here to me what they did when they had a warm winter when there's no ice harvest, and I don't really have the answer in terms of on a small farm like this. 1900, there's a record, they called it an ice famine. It must have been a winter like we've had recently, and there was just no ice, so it was a big change for the industry, and a lot of people lost money. So why did they harvest ice at the Dreiblelbis farm? It probably wasn't a commercial operation to be sold, although we did have a verbal account that they would supply some ice to the village in Virginville. Do you think it was to cool their food? Well, actually it was to preserve the milk, to get it cool enough to ship it to the dairy. And milk comes out of a cow at 99 degrees, so you think all summer long that milk has to get cooled rather quickly. So the process was they'd put the milk in a can, set it in a tub of spring water, pumped out of the well, and then add some ice to that water bath to help cool the milk down. most farms did that because they had to. They could not expand their dairy herd unless they had ice harvesting capacity. But again, the ice was so valuable that it was considered one winter's of ice harvest could equal the entire value of the farm. If they were harvesting ice in addition to what they needed for dairy, if they'd harvest ice to sell, they could get the entire value of the farm in 1 year just from selling ice. So you get an idea. This is a big deal, and probably worth the effort for them that they put into Keep my hand where it belongs. So, what the process was first, before any of these tools were used, or anything you think of as ice harvesting, would be you had to culture your crop of ice. And that is, as it was freezing, every time it snowed, you had to go down and plow your lake or shovel your lake. And every day it snowed, clear it off for two reasons. One, if you left the ice on it and it got water on it, it would start to honeycomb and it wouldn't be solid ice. But also the snow would insulate the ice and it wouldn't freeze as thick. So to get that insulation off, to let it freeze. So once it was good ice, they looked for 14 to 18 inches thick. And the first year we did this, we had blocks that were about 18 inches. And man, these things are heavy. So the first efforts at harvesting ice, they would chop these out with axes, just hack big chunks out. Well, that progressed from there pretty quickly to where they came up with a handsaw. And this is a huge amount of work with 18-inch blocks, but would saw out these blocks. Well, little by little, they started getting smarter, and oh, we never brought it down. I need 4 volunteers. Brian, can you get 4 people and bring down the ice sled? So you would start after you had your pond scored. They would lay out a grid of blocks, 16 by 16 or maybe 16 by 20, but they wanted to keep them uniform. It was very important to, if they would hold out to be even in the ice house, that they were the exact same size. So they would mark out a grid, and that's the piece of equipment we're going to bring down now that would draw out a grid. But along with not only just mapping out this lattice work or the grid work of what size to cut the blocks, this had a feature where they could lower the chisels. Each pass could take another pass, and they could actually gouge out the ice about 7 inches deep before they started sawing. Now, this is a piece of horse-drawn equipment. So you had your horse could draw this out and at least get a 7-inch groove before you started cutting the remainder 12 inches. So we have our trusty horse team bringing in the ice sled. All right, that's good right there. Thank you. All right, so you have a single T. Hook that onto the horse. You can see these teeth under here. And these are adjustable, and they can lower that. You know, each pass successively make it lower and lower and lower. Had to be way easier to have the horse pull this than to sit and saw that additional amount. So once your pond is out in this lattice work, then you would get your big ice chisel and chip a hole that would allow you to get started with your saw. So now once you have that hole, then you would progressively between the ice drag and the saw out these blocks. So now they're floating in the pond. They would usually make a channelway, cut the blocks, and then float them down the channel over to a ramp that they could pull up into the ice house. So you would have this evil looking instrument with a spike on the end, but you could from long range float your blocks and stay out from falling in the water and float them along the channelway till you get over to the ramp. And then, who is my ice tong demonstrator? Where's Tor? Go on, Tor. So now you can all get up here and get a chance to haul around some of these blocks. Come on, Tor. Grab a hold of these guys. You'll see now these are miniatures that we made in our freezer. But yeah, turn around and show them there. You got that. That's pretty good. But you can see how heavy these are, and think of something 18 inches thick and a good bit of weight to that. Tor, put it down and pick it up again. We'll see how those tongs work. There you go. Turn over here and look at me when you pick that up. You get the teeth stuck in it. There you go. Very good. You think you want to get this as your job? You could take a little buggy around Downingtown and deliver ice. Great. So then they would pull up a ramp, and then we had one of our volunteers make a replica of what possibly could have been used as an ice sled. Just a runner drag on wooden runners, and a horse could pull this up to the ice house. We also have a real ice harvesting sleigh up here. When Steve comes back, he's our horseman. I think I'm going to have him talk to you a little bit about what types of shoes the horses would wear that allowed them to walk on the ice without sliding around, and then explain maybe a little bit about our horse-drawn sled. That was just donated to us, so you're the first people to see it. So, in general, though, they'd load up whatever conveyance they had to get from the ice pond to their ice house. Another system of ramps there to slide it up as best they could. Pack it in the ice house, maybe 18 inches from the outside walls. Fill it with sawdust or marsh grass or straw. They'd use marsh grass. Actually was preferred, but was much more expensive than sawdust. So sawdust got used fairly often. But they'd also put a layer of sawdust between the blocks and the ends so they wouldn't fuse together. So they'd be able to get them out individually as they needed it. And again, it was important that it be symmetrical and uniform so there was no airspace, and they would stack it all the way to the rafters as much as they could. On a good year with a good crop, they would find that the ice could last into September. So it was kind of an efficient process for what it was. A huge amount of work, but it did work. You know, then the sawing was such a hard job, they were always inventing something to improve that. 1870, they had steam engines out on the big lakes with the commercial harvesters. The steam engine would run a saw. They could actually saw it out like a circular saw. Electricity came into being then about 1900s. They had some electric-driven saws. There's even a picture I saw of a car that they strapped a circular blade to the back drive wheel and were sawing the blocks of ice with a car. So anything, get away from that saw, because it is hard work. So what brought an end to the ice harvesting industry? 1910 to 1920. Raise your hand if you think you know. World War I, possibly.
Ammonia refrigeration.
Ammonia refrigeration, yes, and that's important. He said ammonia because today you don't use that in your own refrigerators, but sure, refrigeration was probably 50 times easier than, if not 100 times easier than this process of ice harvesting and storing it. However, the U.S. government pushed ice harvesting during World War I and World War II to preserve ammonia. And it was such a valuable commodity that they thought, let's replace refrigeration and get back to harvesting some ice. It was kind of the war effort of doing whatever you could to make this work. So the government actually, there was a small resurgence about trying to do ice harvesting to substitute for refrigeration. But that ended with the war, and they immediately switched to refrigeration. That was it. Steve. Hello, Steve. Steve, can you talk to him a minute? Yep. Oh, you're gonna tie him up? Okay. Well, let's walk over to the sleds here and.
I do, Mark. There are about 8 people.
Well, they can do the 3 o'clock lecture.
What? No, but I mean, just so that I'm standing in the parking lot.
horseshoes have spikes in them. That's why they were able to grip. Never seen them before.
Steve is our local horse expert. He is a farrier in addition to farming with horses. He does own blacksmith work. And I kind of put him on the spot this morning and said, well, I have this horseshoe collection of cells, but these are all wrong for ice. So he's going to look around and see if he could find some real horseshoes. And he just talked a little bit about the horses, how they maybe were used, and types of shoe they would wear. And then he might be able to tell us something about this sled. These horses there are percherons. Often they're pregnant when they're here, getting ready for the next generation. They need horses. And if you come back in the summer festival, he's on duty then too, doing rides down the perimeter of the property. We were hoping some year we'll have snow and we can do sleigh rides. And he will do sleigh rides. If you ever see this advertised and we have snow on the ground, we have about 3 or 4 inches, we'll be doing sleigh rides.
My grandmother used to go to school on a sled. She said when I got too much snow, her dad would
So again, I put Steve on the spot this morning and said, hey, can you find any horseshoes? So I'm going to put him on the spot again because I don't think I told him about the ice harvesting sleigh that was donated to us recently. I'm not sure if the top box goes with the running gear, but this is what I was told, that this was a set and it needs to be refurbished. But so anyway, I told a little bit about horses, so you give them a little bit of horses, what horses might have been used for, and the types of shoes that.
Can you hear me? Yep. Okay. They have shoes there, I guess they found on the farm, which would have been, some would have been just a shoe to protect their feet. Then I went through my collection at home. I've been a farrier now for just about 50 years. That tells you how old I am. So I collected some shoes. Here would be a typical ice shoe, which they would have used with a lot more cleat on than some of those. A barefooted horse without any shoes is good on ground, but if they are on ice, they're very slick and they fall very quickly, and then they can't get back up. So I brought some different types of shoes. Which have substantial cleating on. This one here has once turned the other way, because if they were all turned this way, there would have been nothing to keep the horse's foot from going sideways. So that particular cleat would keep the horse's foot from sliding sideways. That would have been for a smaller, probably not a horse that would have been used for ice harvest. They would have used more of the draft horses for a heavier horse to do more pulling. But that would have been for a road shoe. Then that's just another type of, that was a special shoe with a bar on. As cleating that would keep the foot from sliding sideways as well.
What happens if you use that shoe on ground or on road?
They will. It would put a little bit of extra pressure on the horse's foot because of the extra length. It would put a little bit of more stress on their tendons than would normal. But the horse pullers in the pulling contests, they will use caulks on the horse's cleats similar to that, so they can really, they don't slip out. They really want them to bite in the dirt. That's all I brought on shoes.
Question. So would those have been nailed onto their hooves and then you would have to change them out once you were done?
That's right.
Or it's a lot of
That's
work,
right.
even more work.
Yeah. Now this type of shoe here, those are called caulks. They had a tool that would take those out, and you could put one in that's not as aggressive, which you could do when the shoe was on the foot. But a horse with shoes on, that foot grows just like your nails do, and approximately 8 weeks you have to take the shoe off, trim the foot, and nail the shoe back on. Anyhow. But For the most part, for ice harvest, I'm sure they put special shoes on just for that, for the horses that were working on the ice.
Now that one with the spike on the end, is there like a right and a left shoe?
Yes, there is. Yep. I would assume they would have put that on the left foot, on the outside. Those type of shoes can be a little dangerous for your horse, because if they would hit the other horse with one of those, they can do some serious damage. I don't know if they used any kind of protection. I've never seen no photos where they would have had. Most of those horses that work on the ice itself were used as a single horse. Pull the ice plows, cut the blocks out. Those were mostly all single horses working. Now the horses on the sleighs to get the ice from there to the ice house, those would have been pairs. But they wouldn't have needed that real aggressive shoe, because the roads would not have been icy as much as they would have been packed snow.
Well, just, you know, this was donated to us, and it was said, this is an ice harvesting sled. Do you want it? I said, yeah, we want it. But I look at it and wonder if it's really any different than a utility sleigh that would have been used for firewood or ice harvesting. I'm assuming this box we have on top would have had a floor to it and would have set down on a platform. The front can steer, and the back stays, I think it looks like they would have been hooked together. Okay, so some parts are missing.
This part.
Yeah, I'll give you the mic back.
This front, this is called a bobsled. So the front bobs would have been sticking out. Where this part, it would have been about close to 2 feet further up. So the reach pole, that slot in the back there, you see, there would have been a pole coming through there. This would fasten to that pole, and then there would be a kingpin that would go down through and through the floorboards to keep the floor together. But yes, this would have been a typical one, because most of the farms' boxes had higher sides on, where the ice thing would have been low, because they couldn't pile it up anyhow. But it would basically be missing the floorboards. It does have a set of brakes on, which you don't see too often on bobs.
Pull on that, and this cleat here would dig into the ice.
I saw one was very unique. That was all set up mechanically. When the horses held back on it and it started to run on it, it would automatically push it down.
That was power brakes. Great. Any other questions for Steve? He'll be around, you know, with the team there, so if you think of anything, get him on the ride back. There you go. Great. Well, thanks, Steve, for participating and helping us here at the farm. Great. Thanks, Steve. Okay, so you can follow me over to the ice house, and then we'll show you that. We're actually in the process of getting the roof back on it. The farm bell is on top of the ice house, so that'll get back on top too. You still have the bell. And so we'll come over and take a look at that, and then anybody who wants to, my son has volunteered to go down and try to cut a block of ice out of 1.25 inch ice. So he might get wet feet, but at least anybody wants to go down there, he'll demonstrate it. Oh, okay, and Steve volunteered to shuttle anybody down there that would want the wagon if they don't want to walk that far, but it's about from here to where the crossroad was, that much further on down. It's not too bad. So let's go over to the ice house. Yep. Yep.
Can we vote? Would that be
Because it was all 50 degrees in January. What? What'd you find? Yeah, walnut. Look at, yeah, there's a snowman.
I don't know because we
No. What happened? What's all over your face? Oh. Are your cheeks cold at all?
No.
Hey.
No.
Tell everybody what's inside here. Tell everybody welcome to the inside of the ice house. Okay, you go in.
But that's right, they just passed that on
All right, well, come on around and you can actually get close. We can realize it's a pretty substantial building. A number of years ago, we did repoint the inside. Right now, we have the lumber ready to go to the sawmill to put the sill plate on, rafters, and roof, and the bell tower. You know, from a distance, it doesn't look all that big, but get inside and think, how many 18-inch blocks did you have to cut to stack that thing solid?
What are the approximate interior dimensions?
It's about 16 by 18, 12 feet tall. There are pictures on the ice house that demonstrate some of the years we were able to cut. And it had a stone floor in it that would provide some drainage as the ice melted. There were pebble or rocks on there that would allow the water to separate from the ice and the sawdust and soak down into the ground. I do have a picture, one old picture of it that shows about the pitch angle of the roof and what the bell tower looked like, so we will be able to recreate that pretty close to what it had been. Feel free to circulate around here. That's about it for ice houses. Not real dramatic with just a building, but yes, yeah, and you can see what it would look like in the picture there. The property is owned by the Dreiblelbis.
I took a picture.
And the nonprofit that runs it. So we do depend on our visitors for donations, and the people who are interested in what we're doing and support our project here, we'd be more than happy to any donations, and there's an opportunity to do that at the barrel on the way out. Now, the other thing then, once we leave here, anybody, raise your hand. Does anybody want to go down to the ice pond and see what the sun gets back? We'll go back over to the campfire, and it's kind of the opposite direction, the way you came in, down to the crossroad. If you want to get a refreshment or anything on the way, we can kind of mosey our way over.
Catherine, wait.
So there's the rest of the farm and the farmhouse. He mentioned that there's a museum here, so I guess I don't know if we can go inside the museum part today. Building. Oh, I guess they're doing some restoration work in here as well. Wow. Wow, yeah. Here before going trying to see what the ice harvest would have been like. Oh yeah, definitely. Oh, I feel better.
Very chilly out.
Yeah. go down, or you can walk down to the pond if you want to. Nope, he's taking off without no one. So I guess some people are gonna walk down. They have sticks for the kids to roast marshmallows and stuff. It was good.
Ooh, so look low swing.
Get a little closer if you want to.
How about you just like not run it by the floor and then get it just right?
No, came in here. Yeah. But I saw we went to homestead. Yeah, we reached down. Yeah. And
So we're walking down back.
And if you're on Facebook, they have a Facebook page where they'll announce events.
Back toward the actual pond, but unfortunately it didn't freeze thick enough, so they only have maybe about 1.25 inches of ice built up, but they're gonna do the best they can to demonstrate. Now we were supposed to take a ride back to the parking lot, but apparently most people are just walking back to the parking lot site. But I had to stop and do a little bit of a warm-up at the fire pit over there. So but I'll probably return back here at some point during this next few events that they have. So. Oh, excuse me. They have a nature trail, I guess, right here going this way. There's a few people going around that way. Not sure what the numbers are along here for. I'm not sure where the which way the lake is. I guess it's this way. I mean the pond. But it is still cold. Huh. So which way is the pond? Now that I'm looking at it, down that way somewhere. I see people going down that way, but I'm not sure where the pond is at. heading back to the parking lot where we started at now, so I'm not sure where they're gonna do the actual, if they're even gonna do the actual ice harvest. I was kind of a little disappointed about it, but they gave so much information anyway about the process. It looks like they're loading up for the next trip up to the farm and stuff, so apparently they would go to the local lake, pond here, and harvest it off of there. So he'll be turning with the horses right down where we're walking at right now. These folks are already on the video. Okay, they're getting ready to leave to go back up to the farm.